Hello, everybody. Um, my name is Brandon Ector. I'm a content strategist at the Solana Foundation, and a lot of what I think about is how we communicate with people. One of the this at Breakpoint, we've heard a lot about, like Nikhil said, about these engineering problems, about these new cool engineering solutions, or these very specific things. But today, I think we want to talk a little bit about how, like, something that everybody does, and how because despite all these innovations in the space, we still use a lot of Web 2 tools to communicate, and everyone from devs to founders to your mom and dad, they all, like, no matter what, they're going to need to communicate in this new Web3 future. So today we're going to talk to people who are working on two projects that can help us communicate with each other. So I'd like to introduce Shake and Vixit. And would you mind introducing yourselves?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sheikh. I'm the founder of Wordcel. We are a social media protocol on Solana. And in order to showcase the kind of application you can build on top of our protocol, the first product we built is Wordcel Club, a Web3 medium.
Sweet.
Hi, I'm Vixit Gaur, and I'm the founder of the Dispatch protocol. We are basically building decentralized, censorship-resistant forums protocol on Solana, which also have built-in incentives. Our goal is to be basically decentralized Reddit as a protocol that anybody can hook into.
So yeah, Vixit, you're, like you said, you're like you're trying to build like almost like a decentralized Reddit. Like, what are the challenges that like the Web 2, like real Reddit or like original Reddit, Reddit Prime is facing, and how does Dispatch help solve those problems?
For sure. We actually think about forums as being older than just Reddit, because forums were actually the first generational tool from the internet as well. We've had Usenet, which doesn't exist anymore, but that was the original decentralized forums that existed. And they all sort of went down this road where they all became extinct because of centralized companies, primarily driven by monetization and so on and so forth. And from that perspective, we think that forums have sort of four big value points that have slowly eroded. And Web3 technology can really help activate a lot of these. I mean, the four of them, at least in our perspective, I think the first one is utility. What do you gain out of your forum? The next one is around entertainment. Are you actually getting some entertainment out of this? One is around status. People really care about their social status, numbers of followers, numbers of karma points, and how do you think about that? And probably the last, but definitely not the least, is what I would call goodness. You don't want to have non-moderated forums that have a lot of toxic culture in them, and how do you solve for that? And we believe that blockchain-enabled forums will allow every one of these things to be truly impacted, therefore bringing us back to something that users can own and is completely decentralized.
Nice. Sheikh, what about you? You're also kind of taking a old school technology, in this case blogging, and bringing it into the future, into the blockchain. What challenges are you guys helping to solve?
Yeah. So the way we look at it, blogs are the simplest kind of social media that you can build, right? So we had things like Blogger and Blogspot before we could get things like Facebook and MySpace. It kind of captures the essence of where we are in terms of our blockchain technology today. So in order to showcase that, we started with blogging as a tool to showcase that. And also, it's like it captures the real essence of what it means to express yourself, and that's kind of what kickstarted this whole Web 2 social media-driven explosion of the last couple of decades.
Yeah, so like this idea of expressing yourself, whether it's through a blog or through a forum, like it's universal. It's for everyone. What do you guys see as the biggest challenge for bringing on the people who maybe aren't already like you're building tools kind of like for everyone and not just for the people who are already in this community. Like, what do you see as a challenge to get them like into this world
Yeah.
and understand the importance of self-custody?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the major blockers to bringing to getting mass adoption is user experience. So today we are at a, for example, when my mom uses her phone, she does not really know or care whether what flavor of Android it runs. There are apps that let her, she is able to use WhatsApp or she is used to use Instagram because it operates at a level of abstraction where a user does not really have to deal with that. I think in order for whatever mass adoption that we are expecting to materialize, things like Saga are super important because it builds that layer of abstraction which actually makes this happen.
Yeah. Vixit?
I think for us, it's going to be communicating the value prop of custodial social status. Because like today, we're in this world where if you in some way disagree with status quo, or if you have a dissenting opinion, any kind of a regime that is repressive can sort of deplatform you. And if you don't own your, if you have a status built up over years of work, and you're deplatformed, you basically lose all that work. So it's owned by someone completely different. Now, it's really clear in the case of censorship resistance, but it's not as easy to communicate to the average person. And so the real question is, how does somebody who has yet to look at the advantages of a system like this communicate to them and then have them use it? I think that's kind of the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit more about this idea of like censorship resistance, because one of the big challenges right now, especially when it comes to publishing on the internet, whether it's on a forum or a blog or on a news organization, is that sometimes those sites go away. Like, how do we like are there like examples like that we can think of like where we can, like, examples we can use for people who are not necessarily like aware of how important owning our actual, like, the words we put out there are?
I think there's maybe two ways to look at it. One is around the content, and one is around your social profile. Right? The content one is a great example. Was recently Kara Swisher was talking about how a lot of the work that she did with Walt Mossberg was completely taken down by the publication they did this for, without informing them that all that 10 years of work was gone. And it was dependent on the whims and fancies of some organization in one company where that much work was taken down from the public good. Storage on the blockchain is a great way to actually perpetuate this beyond the constraints of any one company. When we think about sort of the issues in Iran right now, where people are speaking out for various rights for women and things like that, a lot of them have been deplatformed, and those are controlled by one organization, one government. But they should have the ability to take that status they've built and go someplace else with that status intact, rather than start from scratch. And so the portability of both your status and data is sort of highlighted by both of these ways. Maybe that sort of addresses the question in some way.
Yes, it definitely does. Sheikh, I think you kind of, when you were like starting to develop Wordcel, you kind of are, you are a writer, you're a little bit of a philosopher, and you kind of like discovered this idea like a little bit by accident. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So the way okay, here's a little tidbit about how Wordcel got started, because I was writing deep dives on Solana's architecture, and when I was looking for a place to publish whatever I had written, my only options around that time was Medium or Substack. It kind of fundamentally did not feel right to me that I'm writing something about Solana and there isn't a Solana native solution that I could use. So I kind of put my shape rotator hat on and started scratching my own itch. And that's kind of how it shaped into Wordcel Club, the blogging platform that we have today. And jumping back to the content standing the test of the time that we were previously discussing about, I think a huge part of that is not just something being on the blockchain, but it's also about having open source software and open source specification that can render all of this and present it to your end users. A lot of, for example, earlier when we were discussing, you were giving the example of Flash and how Flash went away, in a flash. And now that's mainly because now today none of the browsers support it. What if we have like much more stripped down specs which are easy for anyone to follow, and what if there are like open source software that exists which would allow you to view that content whenever you want, and that way it stays truly permanent than it being permanent with conditional to the software to render it being available.
Yeah. Because it's really interesting right now. Like we're kind of, for example, the example of Twitter, and how right now there are everyone's like, what's going to happen with Twitter because of where people have built careers and have done all this form of writing, and we've seen in the past with other platforms that aren't necessarily word related, but like Vine, for example. Do you do you see your projects as kind of the foundations of do you you kind of mentioned the idea of having things live on forever? Is that where we're going in the future? Is the idea where actually the stuff we write can actually live on forever?
Yeah. So taking a step back, I think it's more than them living on forever. It's us as individuals being able to assert our sovereignty over our data. Our whole industry is, we got started because somebody said Bitcoin as a way to assert financial sovereignty. And with the protocol that we are building, the way we think about it is that our social lives are becoming increasingly digital, and we should be able to assert sovereignty over our own social lives. It should not be like one centralized company that decides that, hey, today we are going to change a particular rule about how we are going to operate, and tomorrow all of your social life and meaningful relationships that you have built are gone. It's
Yeah.
one centralized entity
Gone.
that controls it.
Yeah.
I think from our perspective, you should reward good behavior. Good behavior should be incentivized. And the question is, who decides good? What is the behavior and what is the incentive? And if you could actually standardize the way to think about this, then you have various people defining their versions of good behavior and incentives and making it much more of an open world as opposed to relying on, let's say, Twitter in this case, to give the verified tag for their behavior of good, which is today $8 a month versus last week it was, do you have a sense of worth in the community? Are you famous? And it's all decided by them, right? Similarly for moderation, right? Today, one company, it's incumbent on them to create everything to do with moderation on their platform. But in the future, having an open standard for content publishing and moderation allows anyone to build their own versions of moderation, ranking, and things like that, which suddenly makes this much more of a tenable problem when you put many, many interested parties to be able to solve this in one place versus one company trying to do everything, which is where we are today. And I think for me, that is the future, where it's a completely permissionless, composable, and decentralized way to build not only the data structures, but also the tools to manipulate them and use different ways of subjectivity to make this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So we only have a minute or two left, but I'd love to hear where you're bringing Wordcel and Dispatch into the future. Where do you go from here?
Yeah. So a couple of days ago, we announced that we are working on a decentralized Twitter. In terms of how both in terms of how our protocol needs to grow, and also in terms of what is more socially relevant, we kind of look at the decentralized Twitter that we are building as a stepping stone towards that.
Nice.
I think for us, it's figuring out good behavior and incentives and saying, can we have a protocol and a platform where people can be incentivized for good behavior? And that could mean, for instance, for Web3 communities, You have easy ways to reward community engagement in a way that you cannot do with existing tools like Discord or Reddit or Twitter. Or it could mean that for certain moderation schemes, you can reward people for doing that. So I think that's kind of how we see the future of Dispatch.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a really great conversation, and I'm very excited because, like I said, these are the tools that I think everyone, like from devs down to your grandma, are going to be using eventually on the internet. So thank you so much for the great conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Of course, thank you.
For having us.